How to use a rotary cutter. Thanks to Michael Miller Fabric, Cricut, and Fairfield World for providing supplies for this video. To use a rotary cutter safely, you'll need 3 different tools. One is the rotary cutter, one is an acrylic ruler, and the other is a cutting mat. You'll want to combine all these 3 things to cut safely. Each rotary cutter is a little bit different. On this one, and you can see here, right now it has a protective sheath, so you can't actually cut anything. When you pull this button down, the sheath is removed, meaning that you can use the cutter. This little lock button locks it back into safety mode. So it's a little bit like a safety. Okay, so now you know how to use this particular type. Others have buttons that go this way, but they're all pretty similar. When you start using a new blade, you'll want to check how it works first before you start cutting anything. Now that you know a little bit more about your cutting blade, let's talk about your ruler. I'm going to just put a sample piece of batting down here so we can look at the ruler for a moment. First of all, you'll notice that the ruler has markings, but it also has these it has markings for length and so forth. It also has these little dots. What are these little dots? And every kind of acrylic ruler has some variation on this. This helps you align the ruler to the cutting board grid. Okay, so if you see here, let's say I wanted to make some kind of 1/2 inch cut, I want to make sure this ruler is still straight. So if I line it up to these dots on the edge, I can see if the dots line up on here. It's not always dots on every brand of ruler. Sometimes it's small lines, but the purpose is the same, to make sure that you are aligned when you are not working in full inch measurements. So I'm working with a piece of fabric that was already cut to 6.5 inches, and so I don't want to have to recut that edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line the fabric up to this mark, this solid line that indicates the start of 1 inch on my cutting board, and I'm going to cut through the 3 layers here. So the first step is you're going to line up your acrylic ruler so that it goes to the place where you want to start cutting. I'm going to scooch this over a wee bit. So I mentioned I wanted to do 6.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the cut on the 1/2 inch mark. All right, so I have this piece is aligned here, and my ruler is lined up to these little hash marks that indicate that it's at the 1/2 inch mark. And just to be certain with my ruler, I'm going to also line it up at a solid inch against my cutting mat. That way I know it's in the right position. Before I start, I'm going to make sure the blade is active, and I'm going to start at the bottom because I want to cut away from myself. I'm going to have the blade aligned to the ruler. Okay, and the fabric that I want to cut will be on the side of my dominant hand. Since I'm right-handed, it's on the right side. If you were left-handed, you would be working like this. Okay, so you want to start at the bottom and cut away from yourself, and you want to make one smooth cut. So I'm going to do that. Ta-da! Take away the excess fabric. Now, as I said, I wanted this to be 6.5 inches, so this is my 1/2 inch. Now I'm going to count 6 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to align the ruler on the opposite side of that 6 inch mark. And I'm going to repeat the process. So I'm going to start at the bottom. My blade is still out. And I'm going to slide evenly across. Now, one thing you'll notice, put the safety back on while I tell you about this, is that my fingers are not right at the edge of the ruler. That's for safety reasons. The closer my fingers are to the edge, the more likely they are to get cut. Even if they don't get cut, it's more likely to bump into, even if I'm not on the blade, bump into the cutter and make an imprecise cut. So I'm going to take away this fabric that I don't need for this project. And I'm going to cut the other edges of this so it's 6.5 inches. So again, not wanting to kind of waste the work I've already done, I'm going to line this up to that inch mark. If you already have at home a larger cutting area than I do, you can probably keep the fabric still and walk around your cutting table. But if you don't have that, then what you want to do is what I do, which is move the fabric really closely, holding it all together, all the layers, so you don't have to recut every layer to align it. Okay, so now I already know, remember that this piece of fabric was 6.5 inches wide, so I want to line that up and really just be trimming off this excess piece of batting. So now I'm going to cut through. Okay, and I'm going to repeat the process, turn it. Now I want to line it up on the 1/2 inch, because remember I'm cutting for 6.5 inches here. Okay, my ruler is lining up. Putting the safety on, and here you go. Ta-da! We have 3 6.5 inches pieces for my project. So I have the top and bottom fabric and my batting piece. And that's how you safely use a rotary cutter.